But first to Westminster, where the Prime Minister has rallied behind long-term foe Nigel Farage after a bombshell dossier laid bare the reasons he was cancelled by Coutts Bank. The 40-page file reveals the private bank shunted the former UKIP leader after deciding his controversial views failed to align with its own values. A reputational risk committee concluded that Farage's comments about Brexit, his friendship with Donald Trump and his attitude towards LGBT rights rendered him incompatible with Coutts and its inclusive agenda. Well, earlier in the Commons, Rishi Sunak criticised Coutts for closing the account and promised to crack down on the practice.
It wouldn't be right if financial services were being denied to anyone exercising their right to lawful free speech. Our new Financial Services and Markets Act puts in place new measures to ensure that politically exposed persons are being treated in an appropriate and proportionate manner. And having consulted on the payment services regulations, we are in the process of cracking down on this practice by tightening the rules around account closures.
Well, Farage has now demanded an apology from the BBC after it reported Coutts had ended the relationship for financial rather than political reasons. The broadcaster's business editor claimed the account was closed because Farage didn't have enough money. This story is extraordinary in the way it has united people against Coutts. I mean, first off, I keep thinking you wouldn't want to be the head of corporate comms for Coutts Bank at the moment, would you? I mean, they have had an absolute nightmare with this.
They totally deserve it.
I think they totally do deserve it. And I also think that second bit where the story was put out that, oh, Nigel Farage wasn't rich enough, that clearly came from Coutts as well.
It was
a
disgraceful.
It's a double
that
whammy.
was a piece of disgraceful reporting by the BBC, I have to say. So I read the story when it came out, and it was based on a single source, something that I've been utterly traduced for doing in a book, in one paragraph, in a completely different set of circumstances. This was one of their most prominent stories on the BBC News websites, either the top story or at one point it was number 2, number 3. It fell down a little under ratings. Normally, the BBC's editorial standards would not allow you to publish a story based on one unnamed source. Very quickly, people started messaging the reporter, Simon Jack, saying, this is nonsense. I've got far less money than is being claimed, and I've never been told that my account has to close. I had a couple of messages myself from people I know who haven't got as much money. I mean, one actually messaged me saying, I haven't had more than 10 grand in my account for years.
Yeah.
So this was clearly absolute nonsense. It was a really desperate piece of spin by Coutts. BBC should not have lapped it up. They did it, I believe, because they've got an anti-Farage agenda, and I think they absolutely should apologise.
Coutts is reputed to have maintained the Queen Mother for many years, and in her account was an average of minus £6 million.
Wow.
So they do not have financial requirements. I know 2 or 3 people who have accounts at Coutts, haven't got a penny to their name, but they're the right type of people. They're aristocrats,
yeah.
You know. That's what Boots is like. So the contention, I mean, Simon Jack, the business editor of the BBC, should have known viscerally that it isn't the case that Coutts requires you to be a millionaire before you can bank there. It's just not true. And just generally, you know, but Coutts trying to say it was financial was to cover up the absolute sinister disgrace of the fact they're cancelling people's bank accounts because they don't like their opinions.
And the point is that this is not, although this is Coutts and about Nigel Farage, and actually, as you say, Coutts anyway kind of almost prides itself on the fact that it's the posh bank, isn't it? It's a posh bank for posh people.
It's not really inclusive, is it?
No, not particularly inclusive. So why even actually say it's inclusive?
Yeah.
Because actually the whole point about Coutts is exclusive.
Yes,
and that when you whip out your Coutts card, everybody goes, ooh. Right. But the point
I've got a fake
is
one.
that nobody should not be allowed to have a bank account because of the views that they hold, because there are other people who've now, in the past sort of few months, have come out and said, my bank account, I've been told I can no longer bank here because of my views on various other things, which are considered to be a bit controversial.
It's not against the law, is it?
No, it's not.
And the bank have it stated in their terms and conditions. I bank with an Islamic bank, and they do the same process too. If you're tweeting stuff and putting stuff out there that they don't agree with, your account is
Yeah, well, they're going to get stopped. There's a law coming in that quite rightly will stop banks acting like
I like
this.
the way you're so optimistic. I mean, you know, it's great that they're saying
well,
they're
just
going to
fingers
bring in
crossed,
this
you know.
law. But I really have my doubts that that law is going to be effective in practice. I think there'll still be little committees of people that are looking at people's tweets and deciding that you don't quite align with their values. And, you know, I guess the case for the defence, the devil's advocate argument is these are private businesses and you oughtn't to be forced to have anyone as your customer. But I think that it really is something unique about banking, because without banking services, it's really quite hard to operate.
Well, exactly. And also, they're not private businesses anymore.
Yes.
Coutts is owned by NatWest, and
Very
NatWest is
important.
And it's owned 36% by us, the British
That's an
taxpayer.
absolutely pivotal point.
And also, surely the whole, as you just said, the point is that nowadays, in this day and age, it is almost impossible to operate without a bank account. So actually, it's a fundamental right to have a bank account.
But then it's not just Coutts, then, is it? Because Farage was claiming that he went to like 6, 7 other banks
100%.
and they all turned him down.
Yeah.
So it's all the banks rather than just Coutts.
Just lastly, here's one of his great crimes. One of his great crimes, apparently, according to Coutts, was that he was friends with Novak Djokovic, the world's greatest,
and
the world's
what was wrong
greatest
with that?
tennis
Because
player.
he refused
Can't have
to
a
have
bank
the
account on that
vaccine.
basis.
Anti-vax,
I mean,
yeah.
absolutely ridiculous.